Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Board Game Buffet podcast, episode number 87. My name is Dean.
And this is Graham.
And Graham, 87. We're getting closer and closer to 100. But as much as everyone's probably on the edge of their seats in anticipation of that milestone, there's still a lot of ground to cover before we get there. So, as you can tell, I'm still in a hotel room in California. It looks like you were in your bunker. And do you have a light above your bookshelf, or do you have almost like you have a skylight up there?
So there's back there is the window, and then over there is lights.
Okay, it is a window.
Yep.
Is it? Okay. Oh, I see. You just have it's just kind of an illusion, an optical. Yeah, I gotcha. So
we should let people know, since we're talking about what our rooms look like, that we're also posting the video of this on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, I guess that would be good. So we are experimenting with recording the podcast, not only for audio for the podcast, but we're also doing it on Zoom for the video. And I don't know if it's something that we'll always do. We'll continue. It just depends on what the quality comes out to be. We don't want to lose the audio quality on the podcast if it doesn't record it as well as, say, maybe Zencaster does. So we'll see. But if you want to check out the video version of it, it'll at least be for the next few episodes. We're going to play around with this and see if this is something that we want to continue to do. I don't have any. I mean, I guess I could hold up the game, the one game I'm talking about, because the rest of them I don't have with me. Maybe Graham will throw some graphics up there. We shall see. But yeah, I know we talked in previous episodes about doing a werewolf game, and the werewolf game did take place. We had 8 participants.
Yes, so eight plus me, the moderator.
Okay, yeah, it was fun. I had a good time. I didn't think I was going to be the we didn't record it to put on there. So yeah, I didn't think I was going to be the werewolf right out of the chute, but everything was randomly assigned, and that's just how it turned out to be. And I was close. I just needed, I just couldn't convince Lance. Ken convinced him to vote against me. So I lost in the very last round, but it was fun. Did you enjoy doing it?
I do. I enjoy the moderation of werewolf. I enjoy playing werewolf, but I also like running it. I get to pick which roles happen, and then it's funny because I shuffled up all the cards and had each person to pick a number between 1 and however many cards was left. And I think Dean was the second person to pick, so he had like 6 or 7 cards to choose from. It's like number 2. It's like, okay, of course he picks the werewolf. People are going to think it's rigged, but it was literally shuffling the cards, and everybody was allowed just to pick a number.
Yeah, and I don't know why I went with 2, because normally I'd pick 4, because that's it's my lucky number supposedly. But yeah, I don't know. I went with 2, so I guess it serves me right.
So I think everybody had a good time playing werewolf, and Dean and I have been talking about doing it again at the end of March. So I think we said either March the 20th or 27th. I forget which day we done.
I don't remember.
It'd be one of the Saturdays.
Okay.
If you're interested, again, let us know. It's probably going to be 8 o'clock Eastern time, and either Saturday the 20th or 27th. And let us know, and I'll be reaching out to the people that played before to see if they want to play. If there's, if you're listening to this and you want to play, drop Dean a note, and we'll take it from there. And what I will probably do is have the Zoom meeting start at like 7:45. So if anybody's new to playing werewolf, I'll spend the first 15 minutes saying, this is how werewolf works. This is how the rules work. This is how you play werewolf if you haven't played before. So then at 8 o'clock, we can actually start the game and assign the roles and go on from there. So if you're nervous about, I don't know how to play a werewolf, I will have like a little learning section at the beginning before the more experienced people join, just to kind of walk you through how werewolf works. So
yeah, because I think last time, maybe one person, 2 people had played.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, now with all their vast experience, if they return, with another 1 game under their belt, it should be interesting. But if you're interested, you can send an email to boardgamebuffetpodcast@gmail.com. and I'll mention it again at the very end as well. So, go ahead.
I was going to say that the one other thing I was thinking of is I know we have European listeners that if you can't make it because the time zone on the Saturday one, let us know if there's enough demand. I could run one like so it'll be like a Sunday afternoon my time, but a Sunday evening for the European listeners, which would be more, be easier for you guys to get to, as opposed to 6 or 7 hours ahead of Eastern time would be like 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't know how many people want to play Werewolf at 4 o'clock in the morning, but so if you're interested, let me know. If there's not enough interest, we won't run one in those different time zones. But if you are interested, let me know or let us know.
Yeah, 4 o'clock in the morning. That'd be, well, there are werewolf games that go off at that time at conventions.
That's true.
I mean, I wouldn't be involved in them, but I do know that they do take place all night long. So, all right. And then we had a week ago, 2 weeks ago, Graham had mentioned to me that there was is it a humble bundle? Is that what it's called?
Yep.
There was a humble bundle for some Steam games. So he had purchased it. I purchased it, and I had already owned quite a few of them anyways. But I got some different ones, and like Blood Rage was part of it, and Terraforming Mars, and Small World, and Love Letter. There was a bunch of stuff in there, and we were kind of messing around with it the other day. We never could get Blood Rage to work multiplayer, so I don't know if it was on our end or their end. We did get to play Terraforming Mars on the Steam app. And it's still, I don't know if I guess it's still not as good as playing in person, only because you can't necessarily see real time what everyone is playing. It does show it to you after they've already made their moves, but it's a little harder to track. So it's a little harder to track, like if they're playing animal cards or microbe cards and stuff like that. You can see it, but unless you start clicking on their player board, it's still not the same as seeing it just sitting out in front of you so you can make some plans. But it was, it was fun. I mean, I haven't played Terraforming Mars I think I figured it'd been almost 3 years. So I did enjoy it. My friend, I got back on it later on that night and played again. I think I just played it. Yeah, it's played a 2-player game. I played we played a specific corporation, me and the AI, but I played on the easy setting. So I ended up beating them by, I don't know, 15 points maybe. So I'm not sure, how good their AI is. But again, I did play it on the easy setting, but it was fun to just kind of get in there again and play much faster. I mean, with the AI and just myself or whatever, because of Graham's horrible AP slowed us down. And to make sure everything was right so he could squeak out a win.
Now, if you play online, you set a time limit to how long the game is going to be, and you're both given the same amount of time to play through. Mine was
but it didn't. Did we get it played in that amount of time?
We finished the game within the allotted time, but you just barely squeaked. You only had like 5 or 10 minutes left. I still had an hour left on my timer. So I'm just saying it may not be me who suffers from AP.
So it was like, is it running like a chess clock? Is that what it's doing then?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I could have swore at one time I saw the little thing pop up says you've run out of time. Do you have an amount of time for your turn or?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I was confused. Because we started a game, then we got out of a game, and then we came back into a different game. So, I'm not sure. I didn't realize that's what it was doing.
I have proof. I should have recorded it.
Yeah, there you go. So that was kind of fun. And then we played Stupid Love Letter, which I actually like the game of Love Letter. Obviously a 2-player game of Love Letter is not nearly as exciting. And I think Graham was cheating. I think he could see all my cards at all times. I think he's like one of those poker bots on back in the day where they could see other people's cards and know what to bet.
We also played 2 rounds of Ticket to Ride, and we finished Ticket to Ride in what, like 10 minutes? Played 2 games.
I think one was like 12 minutes, and the other was pretty fast.
Yeah, and I'm not sure whether that adds or takes away from playing of a board game, because that Ticket to Ride really felt like almost like a filler game. Like if you can finish a Ticket to Ride game, we played 4-player game with 2 AIs and Dean and I, and we were done in 12, 13 minutes. It literally almost felt like a filler game. Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure where the time was saved. I guess we're not actually putting stuff out on the board. I mean, I don't know how much time that could save unless you're sausage fingers and you're flicking the pieces across the board or something, drafting the cards. Yeah, I'm not sure where exactly the time was made up, but they were quick, which is fine.
Yep.
And they were both thrashings to you by me. It wasn't even close. I mean, you say you've played the game. I'm not sure I saw that in you, but
I taught you. I saw the tears running down your face when I beat you in Terraforming Mars. So I figured, okay, the next games I'll throw to Dean.
Yeah, and then the interesting thing with Steam is that you can actually look at how many hours you spent playing games. And would you say your highest, your most played game was?
Oh, it's just Tabletopia.
It was Tabletopia, yeah. And we were only a couple hours apart. I think you had played 6 more hours than I had played on Tabletopia, which led me to accuse you of cheating on me with someone else. And then I think you had 15 hours of Ticket to Ride,
yeah.
And I had 357 hours. That was the very first game I ever downloaded off Steam, and like I said, that was a lot of times in my hotel room. I'm just mindlessly playing Ticket to Ride for whatever reason. Maybe just because there's not much thinking going on. It's I got these cards, whatever. But that's a lot of time. That's a lot of time for one particular game.
Yeah.
I mean, because you play, I don't, I looked at your library versus my library. I think I have 25 titles, and you have, what was it, 200 something, 500 something?
Close to 600, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, have you even played it, all those games?
My completion rate for my games on Steam is 25% or something like that. I've played, I think out of the 600 games, I've probably played 500 and something of them. Now, not to completion. Quite often I'll try it and then just say, I don't like this game, not play it anymore. But yeah, I do have quite a number of games on Steam.
So are your hours, like you said, your most hours were Tabletopia. Was that for all your Steam games? And, video games and everything, or is that just board game related?
No, that's my most played thing on
really?
Steam. Yeah.
Oh, I would have thought it would have been a video game of some kind.
No, I tend to I complete games and then move on to something else. A perfect example is there's a game called Skyrim. It's fairly.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. So I finished the game and it took me about 19 to 20 hours to finish that game. And that's the only time I put into it. My son played Skyrim on his PS4 and he put in like 100 and something hours into it. My other good friend down in the US, he loved Skyrim and he put like 300 hours into it. So my 20 hours, that's my almost maximum that I would play a video game for.
And you played the entire game? You solved it?
Yes. Yeah, I finished the game in 20 hours.
Is it just because you don't do like side quests, or?
I am very main quest focused. If there's an interesting side quest, I might do it, but I'm always going back to, okay, what's the main quest? What's the main quest? Let me do the next step on the main quest. Yeah, I think there are a couple other games I've played a little longer, like maybe 30 hours, but yeah, there's no other game, regular video game, that I would have anywhere close to 100 hours in.
Well, speaking of video games, and I think you were on the Coffee Talk with Uwe Eichert, right, from Academy Games? Or did I do that by myself?
I think you did that one by yourself.
So he had talked about on that podcast that Academy Games had gotten the rights to do a board game based off of the Stellaris video game. And I just saw that they've been talking about they're launching this Kickstarter. So it's Stellaris, is it Stellaris Legacy or Stellaris Infinite Legacy, whatever? But it is based on the IP, and it is a legacy style game. But I think from what I remember, and I haven't looked at the Kickstarter yet, but I think what I remember from the conversation was that it was, what's the game coming out? Is it Oath that's coming out, where you can bounce between player count and you can play it solo. It's always evolving, changing the board, but you don't have to play with the same group all the way through. And I think that's what they're doing with what they did with Stellaris. I'm not 100% sure, but there was something about it when he was describing it to me that I'm like, oh, that sounds really interesting, because I'm not a space guy and I'm not a video game person. So in and of itself, it doesn't have any nostalgia factor for me. But yeah, so if you're interested, if you like the Stellaris video game, but if you like a legacy style game with a twist to it, and I apologize, I can't remember exactly what the twist was that they were talking about. Check out their Kickstarter because I know they're gonna sell it based off of that point. But that might be something you might be interested in. All right, what else is going on? Anything?
I would think I wanted to mention the Patreon page. We quickly mentioned it last podcast, so we've kind of revamped our Patreon. I thought we'd let people kind of know what we're doing. So unfortunately, we launched the Patreon at a bad time last year. We launched it right before the pandemic, and things just kind of got thrown for a loop. So we've kind of refocused and looked at what we wanted to offer people on the Patreon page. So this is one of the things that we're trying, doing the videos. So we hope that if you want to see us, you go to our YouTube page. This will be released alongside with the podcast. So either do a podcast or doing the video. That's not too much of the Patreon stuff. So on the Patreon, we're doing 4 new things? Yeah, I think it's 4 new things. So one has already been posted. One is called The Purge, which is a Patreon-only video show that it's basically me going through my sevens. Getting rid of games that you don't like is easy. But what about the games that are ranked 7 that you think they're not bad games? I don't know which one I should keep. So what I do is I pull 2 of those and basically give pros and cons for both of them. And then I leave it up to Dean and the viewers to say, which one should I keep? And whichever one they decide is the one that kind of goes on my sale pile. The next one is Dean's show. So why don't you tell them about that one?
Yeah, so that one is one that we titled "It All Looks So Good," and that is going through games that are whatever you want to call it, shelf of opportunity, shelf of shame, games I have not played that I own, and Graham and the patrons kind of pushing me in a direction of which one I should play over the other. And part of it is, I mean, it's the looking at what I haven't gotten played, but it's also why did I buy the game in the first place? So I try to, since I don't really know a lot about the games, I haven't played it, I try to convince Graham as far as, okay, well, I bought it for these reasons, and then whether that factors into his decision making is up to him or not. But it also kind of puts a little fire under me to get some games played that I haven't really gone out of my way to. And it might be slightly embarrassing as some of the games that are maybe what do they call them, evergreens within the hobby that I've never played either. Not that I think that you have to play the evergreens to be considered a true gamer, but you know how this hobby is, that, oh my gosh, you haven't played, Sequence. How could you be a gamer without playing Sequence? So yeah, so that is It All Looks So Good.
So those 2 shows are available to patrons only, and only at the middle to top tier. The other 2 shows that we're going to be doing are, one is almost like we don't have a name for it yet, but it's going to be what'd you buy? So it's going to be once a month saying basically what did you buy in the last month, and just kind of doing like a quick unboxing, showing pictures of the game, quickly explaining to people, because for me personally, I tend to buy games that are brand new that you may have not seen before. So it's just a way to kind of show those games. As patrons, you get access to that early, but it will be available to everybody at a later date on our YouTube channel. The last one I think is going to be the most interesting, and that was, if you don't know, Dean is still a war gamer at heart, and
I hide it so well.
I think I've played the number of war games on one hand. So why don't you tell them about our war game show?
Yeah, so for this one, I'd been contemplating doing it for quite some time. If you've been around the podcast since the inception, Dan and I focused a lot on war games. And the only reason we moved away from that, at least from my standpoint, is I just wasn't home enough to get a lot of them played. Dan and Zach tried to carry that on, but then their schedules just got a little hectic. So I know there are people that I don't know if they still watch. Maybe they left after we stopped talking about war games. But like Graham said, deep down at heart, that's where I started. That's where I still I kind of go through the ups and downs of playing them, not playing them, but I think the desire is always there. I always had that interest, and I thought, with there seems to be, especially with this pandemic time, so many new people coming in, not only to the mainstream hobby, but there's a lot of new people getting into war games as well. And for whatever reason, I'm not sure. Maybe it's the history, maybe it's the fact that you can solo play them a lot more easily than you can other games. But I know that Graham has played them, and I know that sometimes he, I think, jokingly, um, you know, looks down upon them. But I think deep down, I really think that I think he would enjoy wargaming quite a bit because of the strategy, because of the conflict. Maybe not the dice rolling, but there are a lot of war games out there that don't include dice. So I thought what we do is we would kind of do a series on war games, but from the perspective of either the new to the hobby war gamer, or the um, kind of how to entice people into wargaming. And so it's gonna be, a combination of finding out what Graham's likes, dislikes are, and then I'm going to try to tailor some games that I think he will like, give him an opportunity to play them, whether it's with me or, it could be on Vassal, it could be in person, whatever form that takes, and then have him kind of give some feedback as to what he liked, what he didn't like. Maybe he doesn't like this type of war game. I know he likes card driven games, but he may not want to play, a bit, a typical old fashioned style, chit pusher across the board. So I think it'll be interesting. No one else may think it's interesting. I don't know, but I I think for we're just it's going to be something different. And so if you have been a war gamer, you've gotten out of it, maybe it'll rekindle that fire. If you've never been a war gamer but it interests you, this might be a good series for you to watch to kind of get to thinking yourself of, okay, well, I like this time period. I like these types of things in Euro games. What type of games would I like? And if you're interested in that and you can't necessarily figure those games out on your own, I'll be more than happy to throw some suggestions and everything your way as well. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I will let people know that this is it's an honest thing that I have literally only played less than 5 what I would consider war games. So I have no idea the depth and the depth of feel that there's in wargaming. So if you're kind of like me, who have always been a Euro gamer or family gamer or whatever else, and think, well, what is this wargaming all about? You're in my position. So hopefully people that are interested in it, like myself, but I look at it and think there's so much out there. I don't know where to start. It's this overwhelming. I have no idea what's out there. So this will be, hopefully an opportunity that viewers can learn along with me of what wargaming is about.
Yeah, there's definitely, there's light war games all the way to super heavy war games, just like there are within the mainstream hobby. There's light to heavy. So if you're interested and, maybe you're a little scared to dip your toe in the water, then grab a hold of Graham's hand and you guys can Thelma and Louise it right over the side of the cliff together into the wonderful world of historical wargaming.
So those are the 4 shows that we're working on. So there's the 2 shows that Dean and I are kind of doing that are going to be Patreon only. And only if you're at a certain level of Patreon, we have access to those. Everyone will have access to the wargaming one and the What Did We Buy. Just any of our patrons at any level will get early access to that. But those will be posted on our YouTube channel. So if either one of those latter 2 shows interests you, they will be done on a monthly basis and they will go up on our YouTube channel, even if you don't want to back us on Patreon. For our top tier Patreon, we are working on a special project just for them. And I think we'll probably announce it on the next podcast of what's going to happen for them. But yeah, so please check out our Patreon page. So when you see the early access, it's going to be the monthly shows of Wargaming and What Do We Buy, and the stuff just for the Patreon, which is the middle tier, will be still get early access, but you'll also get access to those 2 other shows that we discussed. So hopefully you can support us. But again, this main podcast and the video feed from this and the wargaming and the What Did I Buy will always be available for free if you want to on the YouTube channel, or, we're never going to pay for our podcast. We're never going to force you to pay to listen to our main podcast.
Yeah, and when Graham says that we're working on a special project, he means he's working on a special project. He told me about it. I guess after he's already been working on it for such a long time, and I will say that I'm blown away by what he's been doing or what he's going to finally complete. So when he does make the announcement, if you like that type of thing, then I would assume it's going to be pretty spectacular, because I will say that Graham doesn't usually do anything um, half effort, and I look forward to seeing it. So that's about as good a teaser as I can give you for it.
So again, please check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/bgbuffet, all one word. I think it is.
Sure.
Sure.
You're on it much more than I am. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, and then the final thing I will say here in the specials is that, again, we always ask for interaction with listeners and things, and we are, we're certainly getting a lot more interaction than a year ago or 2 years ago or whatever. So just want to say, keep it up. It was great playing some games with listeners, and even with people that aren't listeners, that listeners brought along with them to play the game, and then the emails and the interaction on the Facebook page. And I know Graham got an email from Ian, and he's in the UK, right?
Yeah.
Now, would he pronounce it Ian or Ian?
I would pronounce it Ian.
I know how you would pronounce it. I said, I don't know with it in the UK. Anyways, so yeah, so that was a nice reach out from him, and wasn't anything that you know wasn't like any deep dark secrets or anything like that, but it was just nice to see how he shared how the podcast helps him, and how much he enjoys it, and how much I talk about Arkham Horror LCG. Just fine. I'm not going to change. I'm not going to stop. I will be able to squeeze it into every episode if at all possible. So, all right. Well, I think that's going to take us out of these specials and into the first bite segment. And I got one game played, but I played it 3 times. So a little more than a first bite, a couple of bites. How many games are you going to talk about this time, Graham?
Just one.
Just one. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first?
Sure, I can go first.
I mean, because we're on an odd episode number, so therefore that means there's total randomness to it. So why don't you go first?
Okay. Well, why don't we both do it at the same time?
Oh, there you go.
Mine is actually one from my Essen list, from my 2020 Essen list, and this is Praga Caput Regni.
Oh, you got that played?
Yeah.
I hate you.
It is by Vladimir Suchi, or Suki, I believe his name is pronounced, and it takes place in basically it's the rebuilding of Prague in Czechoslovakia, when I forget which king it is kind of came into power and wanted to make it like a true capital city. So it's all about building up the city. And the main mechanism is there is a wheel in the top right-hand corner of the main player board that's got actions in it. And on your turn, you're going to take one of those tiles off and say that's the action I'm going to do. Every tile has 2 different actions, so you're going to choose which side you're going to do. And there's also a bonus from the actual wheel itself. The actions are going to be things like building a building or building walls around your area, moving down the road, the main road. It's going to be kind of basic things like that, but I don't want it to sound as if it's an easy game to get your head around. It's not super difficult. There's only so many things you can do during a round, but the implications of what you do is kind of where this game shines. So you'll say, I'm going to build a building. Well, which building are you going to build? Where are you going to build it? Is it going to encapsulate a marketplace? Is it going to be on a special thing that you have to pay more for, but gives you an extra bonus? So there's all going to be things like that you have to make the decision from just taking I'm going to build a building. There's a lot of options you have after that. There are many different tracks you're going to be moving up on. You're going to be moving down the main road. And as if you can get to the end of the road towards the bridge, you can actually get end of game scoring bonuses there. There's also 2 different 3D elements on the board, which is one is the Cathedral of St. Vitus, I believe it is. And the other one is the university track. and each person has little cubes on there that you're moving kind of up the track. And the further you can get it up the track, the more points it's going to be worth at the end of the game. But the further you can move it along the track is going to make some of your other things worth more. So you're kind of thinking, well, of course, you want to move it kind of diagonally up to the top spot because it's going to be worth the most for both, but it's very difficult to do that. And there's two different tracks that both affect different types of bonuses you can collect during the round. They're red and blue tokens. There's also going to be you have a gold track and a stone track that when you take those actions, you have to make the decision, am I going to mine my mines and basically get how much resources? So if it's on 3, you get 3 resources. Or do I want to increase my mines, which means you move it from 3 to 4, but you only collect 1 resource. And you have little wheels on your player board that will keep track of how much you have in inventory. So every time you mine and you say, I'm going to take the 3 resources, you click your dial three spots. The maximum you can have is 9. And at certain spots, you can open up other bonuses. So the first time you get to, I think, 6 on one track, you get 1 bonus. If you can get one of the tracks to 9, you get middle bonus. So you're doing all this stuff to get all these resources, to get all this end of game scoring, and trying to advance kind of everything everywhere. But of course, being a typical Euro, you can't do everything. You can either go like, let's say, heavy building. And some of those buildings will allow you to move your people on the university or the cathedral track. But then you're going to give up on other things that you're going to be doing. You're going to be giving up maybe on getting your resource mines as far as possible, because that will also give you a bonus at the end of the game. Or you're going to be giving up collecting resources, or you're going to be giving up collecting eggs or whatever. You're going to be giving up something to focus on other things. So it's like a good Euro like that. But it all starts with just literally taking an action from the board. And of course, if you take the top part of the actions, which are like the newest actions in place on the board, they're going to cost you a resource. Then there's a middle section that if the action gets down to that level, it's not going to cost you anything. And if you let it go for a while, it's actually going to get you a benefit. You're going to get victory points. So you take the tile off, do whatever action it's going to happen. You're going to do everything that's kind of connected with it. Then you're going to rotate the wheel and then put the one you just took back on the top of the wheel. So it's basically made everything else slightly cheaper. And the one you just took is going to be expensive to do again. So you're trying to time everything with the people you're playing with to say, I want to build a building which takes resources. So I'm going to take the resource production now because I see building as like 2 steps behind it. So hopefully when it comes my turn again, that building option is going to be in the green zone, or better yet, the blue zone, where I'm going to get a benefit for it. But then if Dean takes the building one and puts it back on top, well, now I may have to pay to take that action. So there's that whole of timing issue. That wheel is really interesting. It's not an overly difficult game to play, but it is kind of like Twants and Sinew, that type of thing, when it's like, okay, on your turn, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. If you do this action, you have these options, you know, that type. That's what makes it complex. But the fundamental thing of I'm just going to take an action, do the action, is fairly straightforward. I actually quite enjoyed this one. This is one I'm really looking to get back to the table because I've only played it once. And at the beginning, I was kind of like, I don't know what to do. And Lella was like, I don't know what to do. But at the end, we kind of got in a groove to say, okay, I was actively trying to get my work person down the road so I could unlock end of game scorings that I can choose from. So I was really kind of looking for that. And she was doing a lot of building, and there were benefits for that. Then we were both trying to get our people up on the cathedral and the university track, so that she had a lot of tokens, but they weren't worth a lot. I only had a few tokens, but they were worth a lot. So it was all these kind of interesting decisions that you're making to really kind of focus what your strategy is. But it all works really well. And I feel there's a lot more for me to explore for this game. So I'm really looking forward to getting this one back to the table. And that was Praga Kaput Regni. I know I'm completely destroying the name. But yeah, definitely a high recommendation for me for this one.
I know that one was on both of our Essen lists. I think it was my number 1 and your number 3. I was just kind of looking at our Essen lists. I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed it. I mean, just looking at it on paper, it looks like it was going to be a good game, and it's got a good designer behind it. So I'm happy that you enjoyed it. I look forward to actually getting it played. Did you? And I think you talked about it, but how does like because you're the bridge where it's got all
Mhm.
those the is it they're tokens, right? They're tiles. How
Yeah.
does that work again?
So that's I think it's called the King's Road or something like that. So you start on one side of the King's Road, and you have to take an action to move your person down there. Each section of the road, it's not that long, like 4 or 5 spaces, will give you an opportunity to get resources. When you get to the end of the road, you reach the bridge, and you have to pay an egg. And you say, what does eggs have to do with anything? Well, they actually give you history in the book of they used to add eggshells to the mortar to build the bridge. So it's kind of
Right.
thematic. So the first time you go to the bridge, you turn over a silver tile and you put that on the bridge, and it's going to give you something, resources. The last step of the bridge is you get to look through the end of game scoring, which are gold tiles, and you also place those on the bridge, and then you put your person on that to say, I'm choosing this to be my end of game, one of my end of game scoring things. So you go down the path, get to the bridge, build one plank on the bridge, and build the gold plank, and then you can put your person on the gold plank to tie in what your end of game scoring is.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it looks cool. Obviously the most interesting aspect of it when I looked at it initially was that whole wheel,
Mm-hmm.
and the action selection, but the different areas where if you wait a little longer, you get the bonuses. I think you said like the blue section or whatever. So yeah, I'm excited to get this one played. It's sitting here on my couch right behind me in the hotel room, but I don't even think I've taken it out of shrink yet. So yeah. All right, very good. So Praga Kaput Regni by
Vladimir Suchi.
yeah, I'm not a second of the publisher. Was that Rio Grande? No,
No, Delicious Games.
Delicious Games. Okay. All right. So my first bite is a game that I know Graham has already played, but I know he's never played it solo, nor will he probably ever play it solo. So, so I did get a chance to play it. I played it 3 times. I played it solo, and that is Pandemic: Fall of Rome. Now, it is a pandemic game, so it's similar in many aspects, but it does do several things different within the family of Pandemic. You still have so in this game, instead of fighting a disease, a virus, you are the city of Rome, and you are fending off against the 5 barbarian tribes that are trying to come in and sack Rome. Historically thematic, as much as a pandemic game can be. I don't remember all 5 of the tribes. I know you got the Vandals and the Huns and the Saxons, Franks, or whatever they call them in this one. So those are basically the viruses. But instead of just kind of spreading wherever they spread based off of cards, in this game, each of the different barbarian tribes have a specific kind of path that they're going to work their way down to be able to get to Rome. And when you pull the what they call in this one the invasion cards, you look at what that city is, and if there's already a cube there, you can place another cube, or if there's a cube in the city adjacent to it, you can place a cube there. If there aren't either of those, then you kind of work your way backwards along the path to figure out where the cube is going to go out. And there are ways to mitigate cubes coming out. If you as the Roman player, if you have legions out on the board in certain areas, they may get ambushed and be wiped out, but they'll prevent a cube from coming out. If you have legions in there with one of your pawns, one of the roles you're playing, or with a fort, which is I guess the equivalent of kind of like the research centers in the basic pandemic, then again, you may lose a legion, but you'll prevent the cube from coming out. So there are ways of preventing cubes from coming out on the board. And this game is different because in this game you actually have dice, because you are moving around the board with your pawn, with your role that you're playing, and you're hopefully taking legions with you to fight off the different barbarians as you go. So there are some dice rolling in this game. Maybe that's why Graham will never want to play it solo. But it's pretty basic. You're either wiping out barbarians, or you're losing legions, or you may trigger the special action on your own particular character. I will say that one of the things I'll talk about it later. So the other big thing with this game is that instead of finding the cure like you would in the regular pandemic, you are trying to form alliances with the different barbarian tribes. And I think two of them require 5 cards, two of them require 4 cards, and then the one just requires 3 cards. So it's the same thing. Each one of them has a specific color card that relates to them. If I collect 3 blue cards, and I can try to form an alliance with, I'm not even sure. I think that was maybe the Goths, whichever tribe that was. But in order to form an alliance, I have to be in a spot with at least one uh, corresponding barbarian cube in that spot as well. I can't just do it in a city where there's no barbarians. So it does take a little bit of planning to be in an area where there's going to be barbarian at the same time that I have the 3 cards, which sometimes means I don't want to attack and wipe out all the barbarians if I know I'm going to try to form an alliance with them. So maybe I'll not attack the previous turn because I know I'm going to have that ability next turn. So there's a little bit of strategy in that one. The thing with this one is that even if, like, so in the regular pandemic, if I find the cure and I eradicate all the cubes of that color off of the board, then they can never come back out, if I remember correctly. In this game, even if I form an alliance, the barbarians are always going to still be attacking throughout the game. Even if I wipe them all off of the board, they like say all the blue cubes, they're still going to have the ability to keep coming back because it's trying to represent the constant turmoil and revolts that are happening during this time. So I'm never going to totally be able to wipe out a tribe and never have them come back and attack me. So you have that going on. But how they try to the twist they put on in this game is that if I have an alliance with, say, the blue tribe, the Goths, I can then later on, if I'm in an area where there are Goths still there, and say there's 3 blue cubes or 2 blue cubes in that city, and I have a blue card in my hand, I can enlist them automatically. I just play the card, I discard it, and I can, however many cubes are in that area of that color, I can trade them in and put legions out in their place. So it represents you enlisting the allied tribes to your side. Doesn't mean that they're still not gonna, other cubes aren't going to come out, but it is a way of getting them off of the board. And I would say, especially, well, it's probably in either of the games, whether it's a solo or the multiplayer, enlisting barbarians as you've made alliances as the game proceeds is key to winning this game. Because as the game proceeds and as you play a revolt card and you're moving down that revolt track, the barbarians are drawing more cards out of their deck every turn, the invasion cards, and your ability to recruit legions goes down progressively as you advance that. So you start out with being able to recruit 3 legions, and then it's 2, and you might get a couple turns of 2, and then eventually you're only going to be able to do 1. So if you're not able to form alliances and then enlist barbarians, you're going to have a tough time in this game. So I thought that was a neat little twist on it. The other thing that I thought was interesting about this was, we talked about the dice rolling. The management of your dice rolling is pretty crucial. And I think that people probably, the first time they play it, if I go into a city and I have 3 legions with me and I want to attack, well, I just grab all 3 dice and I just want to roll them. But the way, I mean, you can only roll 3 dice at a time, but the way the distribution on those dice, the way they play out, you've got just as good a chance of wiping out your own legions in a battle as you do the barbarians. And so sometimes it's not beneficial for you to roll all 3 dice, especially depending on how many barbarian tribes are there, how many cubes are there, because you could do a lot more damage to yourself than you can the barbarians. And depending on what your special ability is, some of the characters have some pretty good special abilities. Yeah, if you roll that symbol on the die where they can take out extra barbarians or they can add a legion. And then she's kind of it's the purple one. I forget what her title is. It's, she's kind of I don't know, she's trying to be like a fortune teller or whatever she is, where she can look at She can take 3 cards and look at 2, put 1 back, and she can play the event cards. Her special ability is if she rolls that one, you lose a legion. It's not a benefit to you at all. It's a detriment to take her into battle. So um, managing, we talk a lot of times about hand management, and this one it's really dice management for a good part of the game. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So you're going to win this game based off of either. I mean, I think there's 2 ways to win, like 4 or 5 ways to lose. So if you form alliances with all 5 tribes, you'll win. Or if you have a combination of, say, 3 alliances and then the other 2 tribes that you don't have alliances with, if you don't have any of their cubes out on the board, then you'll win. So it's some sort of combination. I played it 3 times. I lost the first time on the regular setting. I played it a second time on the easy setting, and I won by getting 5 alliances. And then I played it a third time back on the normal setting, and I won by getting all 5 alliances, but I only had 1 turn left to do it, or I would have lost. I enjoyed it for sure. So here's the differences between the solo game and the multiplayer game. And tell me kind of, Graham, I mean, what you think about this. So in the multiplayer game, each person's playing their own character. All right. They have their special ability, and each person is playing got their own hand of cards, correct?
Yeah. But it's still like, I believe it's like any other pandemic when it is open knowledge. But yes, each person has their own cards.
Okay, correct. So in the solo game, you are playing 3 characters, and you kind of lay them out, left to right, and then you're going to play in that order each turn. But you are all sharing the same hand of cards. You've got 1 hand of cards that is a limit of 7. What you can do, though, so in the regular version, there's the plot phase where you can swap cards if you're in the same cities. So there is no plot phase in this like that. What there is off to the side of the board, there is what they call the treasury. And the treasury is where you can store city cards. So during your plot phase in the solo game, if I'm in the city, say I'm in Rome, and I have a Rome card in my hand, and I'm like, well, I don't want to get rid of it, waste it, because right now I'm working on, say, black and white. And so I've got an orange Rome card. I could take that card out of my hand and put it in the treasury. And, I can do that in any city I'm in as long as I have corresponding cards. There's no limit to the amount of cards you can have in your treasury. So you can store them in there. And it works. I mean, it works out well, because otherwise you're constantly, with 7 cards, you're constant after the first time through, then it's always a matter of, well, I got to discard. The interesting thing about it is, so I'm using it as storage, but if I ever want to get those cards back out and be able to turn them in to form alliances or to be able to use them, I got to go back to that city. And so, like the last game I played, I was storing black cards, and I'm like, oh, great. I've got 3 or 4 black cards in there. I'll be able to, if I get any more black, I'll be able to solve it. And I'm like, well, hell, I still got to go back to all 4 of those different cities and then pull the cards out. And I didn't think it was going to work at all. It ended up, I was able to do it. I don't think I needed to get all of them out, because, obviously as you're playing the game, you're drawing more cards out and whatever. But I thought it was interesting, because with a 7-card hand, it was just going to be, I mean, there's just no way. And there's event cards in there. I found that I was almost playing the events as soon as I drew them, because otherwise I was going to have to discard cards, sort of thing. And so I thought that was kind of cool. I mean, I know they don't do that in the pandemic game, because even you play solo there, each character, if I play 2 characters, each one's going to have its own separate hand. But yeah, other than that, it's pretty much like Pandemic. It's got a few twists to it. I enjoyed it. I don't know if I like it any more than the regular Pandemic. I think right now I do, because it's new, it's shiny, it's kind of a new twist on it. But if I was going to introduce Pandemic to somebody, I think the regular Pandemic is much easier for people to associate with, maybe more so now than before, versus this one. Because unless you like that Roman period, unless you are just burnt out on base Pandemic, I don't know if this would be the starting point, especially with dice and all that kind of stuff. And the character roles in this one are a lot more, let's say, developed, but there's more things to do. Like there's always a couple of special actions, and then there's some that are, kind of inherent where they're always available to you. Whereas the base game, is, I think you get one special action,
Yeah.
if I remember correctly. So there's definitely more going on in this game than regular Pandemic. I do like the twist that it puts on things. I do like the theme of it, and the solo play was pretty fun. It was at times, like I said, I mean, I probably could have lost two and won one, to be very honest about it. And I think for the solo, like I said, the managing of the treasury cards and the managing of your dice is kind of what makes this game shine to me. So that is Pandemic Fall of Rome.
Yeah, I've only played Pandemic Fall of Rome, I want to say 2 or 3 times when I first got it. I actually quite enjoyed it. I like the. I'm kind of biased because I do like the time period in history that appealed to me. I also thought that I felt it was probably one of the most thematic pandemics out there
Mm-hmm.
because they represent people and they are following the path to trying to attack Rome, which in that time period was exactly what they were doing. Just this constant pressure of trying to get into Rome when you're trying to basically protect your borders. It worked really well as opposed to the kind of nebulous, in Pandemic with the viruses just kind of popping up, which they do. I mean, that's reasonably thematic as well. They do pop up, but it's easier to put a face to the name when you actually see
Right.
that this is the tribe of whatever, Visigoth or whoever it is, attacking Rome, and they're following this path. You can say that makes sense. They are marching towards Rome. So I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it too. Like I said, I don't know if it, I don't know if it'd be the game I would introduce people to the Pandemic series unless they were, you know, big on history. For most people, I don't think it would matter. If anything, it might complicate things, for them. But
Right.
yeah, I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I played it 3 times yesterday, so that probably is a good sign as far as the enjoyment of it. So yeah, check it out. And I know it's one of those games also that when it comes into stock, it disappears pretty fast. So Pandemic Fall of Rome by, I think it's still Z-Man Games.
I believe so. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's going to take us out of the first bites. And, we haven't done a if you like this, you may like that segment in quite some time. So I thought we'd bring it back and we would do a game that probably most people have never heard of. But we thought we'd give suggestions. If you like the game Gloomhaven, I don't know if you've heard of it or not, then we're going to give you 3 other suggestions for games that you may like as well. Maybe you've played Gloomhaven and you didn't necessarily like the theme, but you like the mechanisms. Or maybe you like the mechanisms, but you didn't like the theme. Or maybe, like I said, you've never heard of Gloomhaven and you have no idea what we're talking about. I think it's ranked in the top 1,000, I think, on BGG. So
Is it? It must have moved up then.
yeah, well, I think it got a lot of people in there, just bots voting for it, would be my guess. But yeah. Anyways, if you like this, you may like that. The topic is Gloomhaven. And do you want to start with I don't know, what mechanism or theme or which one?
We'll start with theme. We'll
Okay.
go in the order that you have listed on the document that we work on.
Well, I'm glad you read it. So, all right, start with theme then.
Okay, so mine is I tried also not to pick obvious games. So hopefully Dean didn't pick this, but something like Descent or games like that. I didn't want to go for the absolute obvious connection to theme, but I still wanted a dungeon crawl. And I went with a game called Perdition's Mouth Abyssal Rift. This game came out in 2014, and it is a very, very Euro-y dungeon crawl. There's a lot. It's a co-op game, of course, like most dungeon crawls are, in which you are coming into a dungeon, and it's like a campaign type of thing, kind of like Gloomhaven, in which you are starting off in one area and then discovering stuff and then kind of going on, but not nearly as story rich as Gloomhaven is. But the thing that makes this the most intriguing, and this is either going to make or break it for you, is the cooperative Euro nature of this game. There is an action selection wheel, I think it is in the middle, that has all the actions that heroes can do. But only one hero can do each step. So at the beginning of the game, it's going to be, let's say it was Dina and Lella were playing. Dean is first player, so he puts his marker on action 1, which could be move. Then Lela has to put her thing on action number 2, which could be fight, and I have to put mine on action 3, which could be something else. Then we have to work together to figure out, okay, on Dean's turn, he's going to move, but which order do we want to go in? Do we want Dean to move and then fight? Because I believe you move to the next open spot. So for him to fight, that means we have to have Lela go first so that she can move her marker off of fight and move it somewhere, move it down the ring. So that when Dean activates, he'll go from move. The next time he activates, he'll be able to fight because he's now on the fight thing. There's card play in there as well that you're going to have cards that are going to allow you to fight or to do damage or whatever else. The game, because of that, the game is slow. So it's not going to be like some of the other dungeon crawlers when turn 1, you're bursting out the door and running halfway down the hallway and, hacking and slashing these people. It is literally, I'm going to move 2 spaces. I'm going to turn around this corner. And then in a couple moves, I'm going to attack this creature and I'm going to think it once. But then you have to manipulate the wheel with the other players to make sure that someone else can attack the creature. Because it could be that someone's covering up their other attack space. So I attack it, but I can't attack it again until you're off that fight space, so I can take the fight space. So that's the most intriguing part of it. The people that I played it with, some people enjoyed that Euro side of the dungeon crawl, and some people hated it because it does slow down the game. It means that unlike Gloomhaven, which you're going across 3 or 4 large tiles throughout the game round, Abyssal Rift, you're going over 1, maybe 2 tiles. They're much smaller boards because it takes you so long to do anything. But it's a lot more strategic. There's less randomness to it. Not that there's no randomness to it, but there's definitely less randomness to it. And it really forces you to work as a team. But you also have to really think of okay, if you do this, I'm going to do this so that the third person can do this. But then where are you going to move after that? So we have to make sure the order is right. We have to make sure that your actions you're going to do make sense for where you are on the player board. So in that sense, it's heavy Euro game with a dungeon crawl theme. So I thought if you like the theme of a dungeon crawl like Gloomhaven, but you were looking for something that may be a little more Euro-y, then my pick was Perdition's Mouth Abyssal Rift. I have the original version. I think it's being reprinted, and I think there's like another one in the series called Perdition's Mouth something else. So I believe they all work the same way. And and I think the rule book is almost as long as Gloomhaven's rule book. So there you go.
Is it one where, so how many, is it scenario based or is it like a campaign style game?
It's more like a campaign. So you're not changing the main map board. And you're not, one of the things I liked about Gloomhaven is you have to make choices. Do you go rescue this person or do you go fight this person? And if you go fight this person, you can no longer go back and rescue the other person. Perdition's Mouth is more like you can go back at any time and replay any of the scenarios. It's more of a campaign game in terms of like Descent. Like Descent, you could kind of jump around and there wasn't a cohesive story. It's the same thing with Perdition's Mouth.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't played that one, but I do remember you talking about it and that it was a much more of a Euro-y style game than most dungeon crawls. So, all right. So my thematic one, Graham had said, he didn't want to pick a typical dungeon crawl game, but I did. But let me explain why. So my suggestion is that if you do like the theme, if you do like a dungeon crawler that is actually kind of in a fantasy setting, then maybe check out a game called Sword and Sorcery. Sword and Sorcery by Ares Games. It is a dungeon crawl, but here's the thing. It's a dungeon crawl that isn't going to require nearly as much record keeping because it's not a legacy style game. It is a campaign game, but the record keeping is minimal. It doesn't require nearly as much setup. It has, in my opinion, I think one of the best AI systems in any game, and it is infinitely a better AI system than Gloomhaven. Now, I own Gloomhaven. I've played Gloomhaven. I enjoy Gloomhaven. I don't own Sword and Sorcery. I've played it. Dan owns it. And it's one of those games where if I wasn't already down the money pit of Descent and down the money pit of Gloomhaven, this may be the game where I would have started if I was going to own a dungeon crawler. Because, like I said, less record keeping, less setup time. Awesome AI system. This AI system it reminded me of the AI system that Academy Games used in their Conflict of Heroes, and that is it gives you a card, and for each monster it has their card, and it's going to tell you, you know, if this, attack this. No, that's not available. Okay, then if this, then this. That's not available. You work your way down this card, and it tells you exactly what that monster, that character is going to go seek out. It could be just moving to a more advantageous spot. It could be attacking a particular character, attacking a particular class of character. It could be the weakest, could be the strongest, whatever. So it's very simple, but it's also there most of the times when you're doing it, like, well, that makes sense. Yeah, that it's not one of those where why in the world would they do that when this person's here. So it works really well. The game itself, typical fantasy style. The characters, I want to say the characters are they had been killed and they've been regenerated, if I'm remembering correctly. And over the course of the game, you're collecting these soul points. And as you collect these soul points, your characters are getting stronger and stronger. And, it's kind of like XP, I guess, versus anything else. And it's unlocking some different skills and attributes and stuff like that. And I also think that if they get killed again, maybe they can come back. I haven't played this game in at least 3 years, probably. But I do remember enjoying it a lot. And like I said, if I didn't already have so much in Descent, and I think I probably already had Gloomhaven at this time, I was glad that Dan owned it. And if you've played, there's another series in that by the same company called, is it Galaxy Defenders or Galactic Defenders? It's a space setting, uses the same system. So if you like space, you could go that route. If you like fantasy, you can go the sword and sorcery route. It's still a modular board. It's still it's more of a campaign. I think in the base game you get the first 3 chapters, I think they call them. It's more than just 3 scenarios. It's chapters where there's multiple scenarios in each one, and then there's expansions you can buy for. So money wise, I don't know how it works out. It may end up being more expensive than Gloomhaven if you had all the expansions for it, because Gloomhaven does give you a lot in the box for that base amount of money, but it's not legacy, and it's not a game where you feel like you need to devote your life to it to be able to get through it. When I bought Gloomhaven, I bought it because I thought, oh, this sounds awesome. It's a legacy game. I'll finally get to play one. It's got 99 scenarios in it or 100 scenarios in it. Oh, that's cool. Well, reality has set in. I will be dead and gone and never play all of those scenarios in Gloomhaven. So, if you're more of a realist than I am when I buy my games, Sword and Sorcery could be a good alternative for you.
Yeah, I've heard good things about Sword and Sorcery as well. Terrible name.
Yeah.
But I have heard good things. I haven't played it, but I have heard good things about it. It was funny, little side note here on when you said, let's do Gloomhaven. I was thinking, you know what? I'm not a big dungeon crawl fan, but I didn't have a problem coming up with thematic things. I was thinking of Descent was going to go my thing, but I thought, oh, that's kind of too easy. And then Explore it, which I enjoy.
I was wondering, because I haven't played it and I know you own it. I was wondering if you were going to put Shadows of Brimstone.
Yeah, and again, Shadows of Brimstone is a funny one in terms of it's a Western dungeon crawl.
Right.
But so I was actually surprised I was able to come up with 5 or 6 games just off the top of my head, which I enjoy, which are dungeon crawls, and I always associate myself as thinking I don't like dungeon crawls. Well, obviously I do, because it was easy to come up with the pick.
And it's funny because I always think of myself, I do like dungeon crawls, and I'm looking like I don't own that many games that I would consider to be dungeon crawls. Right. And I guess after Descent, that was kind of my main focus. But Mechanisms, a lot more easy to come up with some games for that category. So why don't you give us your choice for a Mechanism out of Gloomhaven and an alternative?
Okay, so my thing for Gloomhaven is the card play. I thought for me that was the one really unique aspect of Gloomhaven. It was that whole card play of playing 2 cards and then activating the top of one and the bottom of the other, but then they have to be discarded or to be shuffled in. And each time you have to reshuffle your cards, you lose a card. I thought that whole idea of when to play the cards and how to play the cards is what I was going to focus on. So I'm going to take a game that has nothing to do with dungeon crawling, nothing to do with fantasy, but it is one of Dean's favorite designers, and that's Alexander Pfister. And this game is called Mombasa. Because Mombasa, again, theme-wise, not connected at all, but it's all about the card play for Mombasa. How you play the cards and where you play the cards is very intriguing. So Mombasa is each round. It's a competitive game, so each round everybody's going to be picking cards to play, and you're going to be playing the cards of the actions you want to take. And depending on how many you play, will determine whether you get first choice or second choice or third choice of the action. But after you finish playing your cards, they go into you play them in front of your board, and there's you start off, I think, with 3 slots. So you're playing your cards in there. Then whatever slot you play them in the bottom, you're going to move them to the slot on the top, so that you're generating a stack of cards above each slot. And then each round, you're going to take one of those above slots and kind of add it back to your hand. So you're trying to figure out, well, I want to do like a really big, I forget what the actual actions are, like an import action. That means I have to have a lot of bananas. So I could play a lot of bananas. I can play let's say I have 3 bananas in my hand. So I play them all, but now those 3 bananas are going to be split up between 3 different piles. So for me to get them back into my hand at the same time, I eventually have to take all those 3 piles back into my hand. So I love that idea of trying to get the cards to combo at the right time, which is the way I felt with Gloomhaven. I'm trying to play my cards in Gloomhaven so that I'm able to get combos going, which is the same thing I'm doing in Mombasa with playing the cards in the different slots, to make sure that I'm kind of front loading a slot to when I take those cards, I have the perfect combination of cards I want in back of my hand. So that's why for me, for mechanisms, I went with the card manipulation from Gloomhaven, and suggest if you like that kind of card play, then you might like Mombasa for its card play. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. There are a lot of Euro games that have similar mechanisms with Gloomhaven, and I could have easily picked some very well-known Euro games that had those mechanisms, and Mombasa is a great example of that. I don't know if they call it like an action queue sort of style game. Yeah. So the mechanism I chose, it still has to do with card play, but it's the specific mechanism of the action retrieval. And we talk about Concordia all the time, and that's a great example of action retrieval. You're playing cards out, you can't use that action again until you bring all the cards back in your hand. And there are a lot of great games that have that. Mombasa really is kind of the same style with that. But the game that I would suggest, or that I'm going to suggest, is maybe not nearly as well known. Same designer as Concordia, but that is Transatlantic. So Transatlantic uses that same action retrieval. Each player starts out with the same starting deck of cards, and they are going to play 1 card per turn and use that action. And just like in Concordia, once you play that card, you can't play it again. And with Gloomhaven, like Graham said at the beginning, that to me, that is because I'm not that far into it, that I don't know that the story was that great necessarily at the beginning to like I want to play it again because of the story. The hand management, the card play in this game during the battles was the most interesting thing. It was that, do I want to play this card for this? Because if I use this action now, that card is totally discarded. I can't even shuffle it back in. And then every time I shuffle my cards, I lose a card until eventually you just become weaker and weaker and weaker. And I guess you just slowly slump onto the dungeon floor, and you're out of that scenario.
Time out, guys. Time out.
Yeah. I'm on base. Hold on. Or it's the one where someone's chasing you, just fall to the ground. Like, you can't get me. So I think that to me was the most interesting thing about the game. The initiative was kind of cool with it, but I really enjoyed that whole the choosing. Okay, if I use, what was it? If you use the initiative off of the 1 card, you had to use I can't remember exactly what it was, but it's a constant choice of how you're going to use your cards. So in Transatlantic, it's like Concordia, where you're playing a card, you're taking the action, can't use it until you bring it back in your hand. But where it varies from Concordia is when you choose to bring your cards back into your hand, you can do it. The minimum is you have to have played 4 cards. Then if you wait to get to 6 cards, you get a bonus. And that bonus might be you get a an action tile or a scoring tile to put on your player board. Can you hear all the sirens going on in the background here? Yeah. Well, we'll just hold on a second. It's one of the joys of downtown Pasadena is at least multiple 2 or 3 times an hour. And I think the firehouse is nearby. So, okay. So when you so you can wait, you can turn it into 4 cards, 6 cards, you get a bonus, 8 cards, you get a better bonus. And so it's that choice of do I want to bring my cards back in now, or do I want to wait a little bit longer to get that bonus out? And it almost always makes sense to at least wait till you're playing 6 cards. And the director card is what they call it in this one. I forget what they call it in Concordia. So that's the card you play to bring the cards back. So that card does count as one of the cards as well. And so if you get the bonuses, you're choosing, which tile you want to put out, because you have a little player board in front of you and you're trying to put the tiles on there to correspond to the ship colors of the ships that you have in your fleet. But then you're also trying to fill up the rows as well, because those are going to give you scoring points at the end. So there's a lot going on with that, but it just doesn't have to do with the card play. When you collect your cards back, when you bring them back into your hand, you then get to draw a card, or you get to pick a card at the top of the board, which is you're going to add to your deck. You don't have to pay for it. You get it for free. And as soon as you draw that card, you play the card. It doesn't go into your hand. You play it directly in front of you. So you get that action immediately. Now, you're not going to get it again until you bring it back into your deck, but you are going to play it. So you can pick something that's going to instantly benefit you. So that's one thing that's slightly different. And then the other thing is that when you draw that card and bring it into your action, you're going to wipe out the leftmost card that's still up there and then refill the rest in. And as you refill the rest in, there can't ever be duplicates up there. You just discard them and put new cards in. If you ever run out of cards, you just shuffle the deck again. So it's that the give and take of, when do I want to turn in my cards? Do I want to wait for the bonus? Do I want to wait for better card choices that are out there? Maybe my opponent's going to collect the cards. Maybe it'll give me, I don't want any of those 5 cards. So at least there'll be 2 new cards that are coming out. Do I want to beat someone else to a great card that's up there? I really want that. I think they want that. So I need to get it first. Do you want to, do you want to pick a card up there that you may not get the greatest benefit now, but as the game goes on, it's going to give you a better benefit as the game continues. So some of the cards up there allow for immediate scoring of I think they're storehouses. But at the beginning of the game, you may only have 1 storehouse or none, or maybe you got 2. But as the game goes on, you're going to have more and more storehouses out there. So it makes sense to get it now. Not going to give you as much benefit, but down the road it's going to. And just like in Concordia, you always have the card where you can copy someone else's card. So you're gonna start with one of those, but then there are more of those that'll come out at the top. So you could end up with 2 of those in your hand. I guess potentially you could end up with 3 of them if you wanted that. So I like that action retrieval mechanism. And surprisingly, on BGG, when I looked up that mechanism, there aren't a lot of games that use that. I think it only gave me a suggestion of like 80 games, which I would have thought there'd be more than that. And Matt Gertz probably has, he probably has 3 or 4 of them in there. So it was, I just, and maybe it's just because it's one where I don't know if it's the mechanism. I think it's the mechanism that makes me like Concordia so much. I don't know if Concordia would be as fun without that mechanism. And Transatlantic, I know, doesn't get nearly the love that Concordia does. And I think it thematically just depends on what you want to do. It definitely plays different. There's no map necessarily that you're going around. But yeah, I think, Concordia is a good choice as well. But I tried to go with one that maybe no one talks about that much, and that is Transatlantic, if you like that action retrieval mechanism.
I do like that mechanism. I've never played the game, so I'm intrigued by that one.
Yeah, I said it's no Concordia.
Right. So my wild card, and I wanted to go back to a dungeon crawl like game. Now, I am not a huge fantasy fan. Orcs and dwarves and trolls and all that. They're fine. It doesn't really excite me. I like horror games. So I was trying to find a game that combined the dungeon crawl aspect with horror. And this is one that one of the few games I'm kind of all in on. And this is one called Deep Madness.
Oh, I thought you were going to say lobotomy, just for Ian.
I was this close to saying lobotomy, just to annoy everybody, because I haven't talked about it in a couple episodes. But no, this is called Deep Madness. This actually, for whatever reason, I like this theme in books, I like this theme in movies, and I like this theme in games. That is the under the ocean kind of research facility. And the whole idea of Deep Madness is you're a group of people that are going down there and something happens. You've lost contact with the research facility. Your ship crashes into it, and you just barely make it into this underwater research facility. And of course, they've been doing experimentations, and things have gone bad. So parts of it are flooded, and there's monsters around kind of every corner. And so in that way, it's kind of like a dungeon crawl. You lay out the tiles from the map and say, in this scenario, you're trying to get from point A and trying to you're trying to close the doors to stop the water from flowing in. So, you have to go to two different spots on the board, because like any horror thing, things are never convenient. It's like one button's over there and the other button's completely on the opposite side in the dark corner. The other really neat thing it has is it's kind of got, like Gloomhaven has the card play. This one isn't just a straight dungeon crawl. The order in which people activate changes every round. And essentially you have your character cards, so the players have their hero cards, and you also have the monsters that are there. And essentially that forms a deck of cards, and you lay them out at the beginning of the round, and that's the order they're going to trigger in. So unlike Gloomhaven and Descent, when you quite often said, okay, the elf's going to go first, so they can run down and kind of get behind them, and then this person's going to go over here and shoot the magic, and this person's going to get and kind of swing the clubs, and then we know the troll's going to go. This is, you kind of laid out going, oh, that's bad because all the monsters go first, or it's great because I get to go before the monster that's right beside me, so I may have the opportunity to kill them. But you don't know until those cards are revealed. Then each round they're going to be shifted, so you can. I enjoy that aspect of not knowing, or each round, the order that people and monsters go is going to alternate. And it's not just hero, monster, it could be hero, monster, 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 hero. So it just depends on how their cards are played, which I really enjoy. It's a very tense game. Like most horror games, you are on the edge of your seat all the time of whether you're going to be able to make it or not, because it's a co-op game, which means it's heavy, which means it's kind of designed that you're going to lose more than you're going to win. But if someone said, hey, you want to play a dungeon crawl like game, I would say, hey, if you like horror, try Deep Madness. And again, for me, it's just got a lot of things going for it. It's got really nice minis. I like the theme. I like the horror aspect that they've got into it, because there are some rooms that are flooded, and you have to try and get through the water, and you have to make, the longer you stay in the water, the more difficult it is to make your saving roll. There is dice rolling in it. And of course it is pretty brutal when I play, because there's dice rolling in it. But I just really enjoy it. And it comes with a scenario book. I have the expansions for it, which expands your kind of the world, opens up different areas, more monsters, more heroes you can play. I actually have the hardcover novel that they produced. It was one of the perks from the big Kickstarter. So yeah, it's just, like I said, this is the theme for me is really what got me into this. I don't know of any other game that really has the same type of really well fleshed out thematic, horror game. So that is my pick for a wild card. That if you kind of like dungeon crawl, but maybe not like the fantasy aspect, then maybe you want to try Deep Madness.
Now, that one just came out not that long ago, didn't it?
It's, I backed it. Again, I backed the first edition, which I think is almost 2.5 years ago. But then they did a second edition, and then I believe there's these expansions for it. So it is, the newest edition, I think, was just put out sometime last year.
Okay. And you've got expansions, and you've got a book.
I do.
Mr. I don't buy expansions. Wow.
Well, I backed it on Kickstarter, and it came with it. That's my excuse.
It came with it at a higher pledge level.
Maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, don't act like they just threw it in the box. Oh,
I didn't know I
Graham,
was getting expansions.
yeah, Graham won't pay for this, so just give it to him for free. Right. Okay. Well, I do like the theme of that. I do like those. I'm trying to think what the old movie was. Was it The Abyss?
Yeah, same idea. You're trapped
Yeah.
underwater with a monster, and this is just more gory, horrific than the Abyss was, but same idea. Trapped in
Right.
an enclosed environment under the water.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. What was the other game that came out a couple years ago? Who Goes There? Where you're
Yep.
at the Arctic station. I guess it's a play on the Thing
Yeah.
movie. Um, I mean, that one always sounds cool, but I don't know if it was that great of a game or not. But all right, so my wild card is one that it, so Gloomhaven is a legacy game. Um, my wild card is not a legacy game, but it is a sandbox game. So yes, I mean you can choose to do whatever you want. Legacy games sometimes you can choose and do whatever you want. I mean in Gloomhaven you can choose side quests or keep on the main quest, and you can kind of bounce around and go back to the city if you want to, not go back to the city, that sort of thing. Now, when you play Gloomhaven, do you play it like your video games where you just stay on the main quest the whole time, or do you actually do any of the side quests?
We did the side quest because it wasn't just me playing Gloomhaven. So the three of us were playing
Oh,
Gloomhaven. We played I think we played 12 hours of Gloomhaven.
so two
Um,
scenarios. Okay.
we actually got through a fair number of scenarios,
Okay.
but unfortunately, Megan and B left. They fled the country after playing Gloomhaven. So I haven't got it back to the table since. And for me, Gloomhaven is okay. But yes, we did do the side quest. And we would definitely say, oh, yeah, we're supposed to go to the city, but there's, this person who's come up and said, oh, my daughter's been kidnapped. Let's go do that because that's interesting. So yes, we would do the side quests.
So you begrudgingly went along on the side quest. So you probably like kicked the dirt and like, fine, I'll go, whatever. We need to go over here. So my wild card is Western Legends. Now, yes, I know it's not a legacy game, but it is a sandbox game, and it is one where you can virtually do anything that you want to do. If you like Gloomhaven from the standpoint of you're able to buy equipment and you're able to upgrade your equipment, you can do that in Western Legends. You can buy a basic shotgun, and you can eventually upgrade that during the game to a better version where they kind of give it a name, like I don't know, Sweet Shot or whatever the case may be. So you can do that with the equipment. You can do that with horses. With your transportation, you get a basic stallion. You can upgrade it to a named stallion, like Black Beauty, whatever the case may be. I don't know what the names are in it. And then the characters, you start the game by choosing kind of a historical person, and they have a special ability. But from that point forward, if you want to play Billy the Kid and turn Billy the Kid into a marshal, you have that ability in this game. You can work on the marshal track to earn your legacy points, because in this game you're earning legacy points to win. And you can do that by being a marshal and being on the marshal track. You can do that by being a criminal and be on the wanted track. You don't have to be on either of the tracks, I believe, if I remember correctly, and you can just kind of focus on, I want to herd cattle and take cattle to the train station, or I'm going to earn my points by going to the saloon and playing poker, or there's like a cabaret, and there's all these different buildings you can go into and do different things. You can decide to rob a bank. You can decide to go to the bank and deposit your gold. You can go out and try to arrest outlaws. You can rob a stagecoach. You can rob the train. So there's all these different things you can do. I mean, it is literally a sandbox game. And since it's not a legacy game, every time you play, you can choose to do something different. Whereas with Gloomhaven, until you can retire that character, you're kind of locked into playing that same character for however many scenarios it takes for you to earn the XP to be able to retire it and try something different. And with Western Legends, you don't have the obligation to turn that into a lifestyle game. You can play a one and done. You can come back later on and play it again, and not feel like, well, I need to keep playing this game because I have to progress I need to progress the story. Play it once, be a criminal. Play it second time, be a hero. Play it whatever, however many times you want to play it. I think in a much shorter amount of time, it will still give you kind of a thematic story as far as what your character is doing, but it's not going to be one where you're going to have to devote whatever 100 hours, 200 hours maybe to get through all the scenarios with it. Now, if you love the legacy aspect, then that's probably why you're playing Gloomhaven. But for me, I was enamored by the legacy aspect. The story hasn't grabbed me yet. The thing that brings me back to wanting to play Gloomhaven, and even after talking about it now, I'm thinking, man, I'd really like to play Gloomhaven again, because I'm in love with that card play, and the fact that as my character gets better, I can add cards into my supply, and then every battle really is a different puzzle of how am I going to manage these cards. Because in the last battle, I needed to do this. Maybe they were ranged enemies, or maybe now they're more melee enemies. So for me, that's what keeps me going back to Gloomhaven, and not necessarily the legacy aspect of it. So, anyways, that's my wild card. Western Legends. If you like the Old West, if you want a sandbox game, if you want to, basically make the choices that you want to make, check it out. And there's a couple expansions for it. I don't know. I think it's still readily available. But
I believe so. Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting pick, because if you like the aspect of growing your character in Gloomhaven, you're doing the same thing in Western Legend, just in a single game. You're basically telling the story of where your character started and what you want to do with that character. And then at the end of the game, you have a character who's completed their life, and you can definitely see the arc of that person. I know in Gloomhaven, what kept me coming back to Gloomhaven was almost the same thing as real life. I wanted my character to retire. I wanted to get him to the point and basically to see what that was like. And my character was, we must have played longer than 10 to 12 hours. I think we played 10 to 12 scenarios, which would be whatever, 20, 30 hours of playtime. And I got to the point when I think I needed one or two more stars for my guy to retire. So I was kind of looking forward to retiring him, because, okay, I'm not a big Gloomhaven fan, because I got bored of it. So I was looking for something to change up the game, which is why I was really, really gearing my guy to be retiring, so I can see what the next step is. I want a new character. I want a new set of cards, because I found that we've had this discussion before. I found Gloomhaven very repetitive after 20 to 30 hours.
Right. Yeah. You want to be able to open up a new box, get that new character out, see how that person's going to play. And I think with, like with Western Legends, you can start out as a criminal. In the middle of the game, you can shift, you can change, and decide to be on the right, onto the path of righteousness or whatever. And I, like you said, with Gloomhaven, I enjoy it. I haven't played as much as you have, but I think we both are in the same spot, is that I started the game with my son, and he enjoys it, but it is a lot of setup. It's a lot of record keeping and things like that. In between games, then you got to get it back out. And if you're not playing it back to back to back a lot, that could be problematic. And now he lives an hour and a half away. Megan and B moved away. So I'm at that point. Well, if I want to continue playing it, I'm either at the mercy of his schedule, or I just need to restart it and play it as a solo game. And that game is just too damn big to bring with me on the road. I'm not bringing that with me. So yeah, I'm just like, yeah. And I didn't even look at Frosthaven. No. Is it Frosthaven? Is that the one? Yeah. I didn't even look at that, because I'm like, yeah, I'm not going down. I did buy the Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. Yeah. I haven't opened it, and I do hear that's pretty good. It kind of minimizes things. You don't have the modular board. You've got the book with the maps. And I think it has like 24, 25 scenarios. So I think on the net, it plays the same mechanism wise.
Yeah. It starts you off easier and kind of gets you up to the point. So at the end of Jaws of the Lion, you are ready you can jump right into Gloomhaven, because you've learned everything as you went up. It was funny. I'm tempted to buy Jaws of the Lion as well, because I wouldn't mind starting that with Lala and our other game group, because I don't think I don't know whether she would like Gloomhaven or not, but I figured if I start off small, that could ramp her up to Gloomhaven. But it was interesting because I was playing Gloomhaven with Megan and B, and they're both come from a very heavy RPG background. I come up with I haven't touched RPG since I was in high school. Their enjoyment was here when we first started playing. Mine was up here. So I had much more enjoyment at the beginning of the game because of the Euro strategy for it. And the more and more we played, those eventually kind of ended up here. So now we're down here when I've seen the mechanisms that the game has to offer. I'm not as vested in the story. So it's just doing the same mechanism over and over and over again, just because there's a new room of characters. But they got more into the story and wanted to see where the story was going. So when you asked the question about making the decisions on whether you do side things or not, I always left it up to them and said, I don't care.
Right.
You guys want to go rescue the kidnapped person? We'll go rescue the kidnapped person. Or you want to go check out the Mystic Caves? We'll go do, we'll do that. And that they were finding that more enjoyable as the game went on. And for me, it was just sort of mechanisms over theme, and I'm getting bored of the mechanisms.
Yeah, and I don't know enough about it, and I'm not one that would get on like the forums or because I wouldn't want to be spoiled. But I don't know as you unlock the new characters, because some characters aren't available at the beginning of the game. So I don't know as you unlock new characters as the game progresses. Are there new mechanisms that they're bringing into the game? Maybe that would be kind of a new adrenaline spike for you if you were getting some new mechanisms. So yeah, I don't know if that's the case or not, but I guess maybe that mystery might be enough to keep you going. But it's a slog. I mean, it's if I only had 10 games in my collection, yeah, I'd probably be playing it a lot. But I'm not going to bring it with me on the road. And quite frankly, it just got to the point at home where I'm asking Nolan, hey, you want to play Gloomhaven? Yeah, sure. If you get it set up,
you come back in an hour.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, and that was the thing. So I'd have to get it all set up. He'd want to play one scenario. He's like, okay, well, yeah, I'm good. Like, wait a minute, I've already got out on the table. Let's try to do another one. So I don't have to do all the
down.
Yeah, I don't do all the record keeping. I have to take it all down. And because just getting it back in the box is a game in and of itself. Like, how did I have these placed in here before? Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, in theory, it sounded great, and I don't think it's I still enjoy the game, but man, it's one of those games. It's got to be it's almost like we say playing a game at a convention. It has to be the right time, the right place, and that's kind of where Gloomhaven is falling for me, just because of my lifestyle, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap up. If you like this, you may like that. It's actually going to wrap up the entire episode. We're going to go out on a maybe we'll go LARPing. You want to go? Why don't you fly into California? We'll go LARPing.
Am I allowed to take my foam sword on the plane?
Well, you might be the only one on the plane, so it may not matter. As long as you have your cape, just put your cape over your head to serve as your mask, and you should be okay. Have you ever LARPed?
No, I have no desire to LARP.
Have you ever done one of those true dungeons?
I haven't. True dungeons do intrigue me. Again, it's because of the escape room puzzle aspect of it that they intrigue me. Mm-hmm. So if I was at a place that had true dungeon, if it was cheap enough, I would do it. But
yeah, they're generally pretty expensive.
Yeah.
I think I was telling you, and I think it's in Utah. In the fall around Halloween, there's this, it's not an amusement park. It's just this, I'm assuming it's permanent because it looks pretty elaborate, but it's only open certain times of the year. And I don't know if you would consider it LARPing or more of a true dungeon style, but it's like this little fantasy village, this town. It's got the taverns. It's got, all these different places you can go to. And I guess maybe some people dress up when they go, but all the workers are in costume. They're in, they're thematic, and you're going in there and you can go on these different quests, and they'll give you quests to go on. You have to go to different locations, and I don't know what you have to do. And I don't know if they give you like some sort of token if you pass the test. It looks really interesting. And when Amy and I were driving back through there a couple of years ago, it was the right time of year. And I told her about it, and she immediately put the brakes on that idea and said, no, I'm not interested. So I look at it online, and man, it looks really cool, but I don't know if it's more LARPing or more true dungeon, or if you're just paying to go in there and eat a $12 turkey leg. I'm not sure.
Yeah, for me, we did something kind of similar. So my love for escape rooms. There is an escape room that we went to with Megan and B, Lel and Gareth. I think it was Jack and Jason came as well. I forget everybody that was there, but it was in a large industrial complex. And when you walked in, I think it was called the Village or something like that. They recreated like a medieval village inside this space with little houses and little shops and whatever else, and different houses would have different puzzles in it. And it was literally like if someone was on one side of the complex, if you wanted to get them, you had to walk through the streets to get them. Like, it's not huge, but if you figure like a warehouse type thing, the entire warehouse was this one village. And it was all kind of set in the evening and at night and all that. And there was a creature that came out. So every once in a while, there'd be, I think it was like a dong or a bell or tolls or something like that. And everybody had to get back to the church. So no matter where you were in the village, you had to figure out it's kind of like maze-like, that you had to kind of run back to the church and then wait for the dongs to finish. Because if you got caught, I forget what the negative thing was, thinking you got put in prison. If you got caught out in the streets during this time by the staff, you'd be put in prison. And of course, the staff is all dressed up in like really creepy outfits and all that. But it was really cool that you kind of got to do an escape room in a very large complex where you could literally say, let's walk down this road and kind of see what's here. And, oh, there's a school here, or there's someone's house here. Let's look in someone's house. Oh, there's nothing here. Or, hey, what is this little thing in this corner here? It was really cool. Very, very immersive.
Yeah, it sounds very similar. Although this one, I think everything is all outside. But yeah, I do remember seeing things where there'd be, monsters that would either invade the village or the town or whatever. And yeah, I mean, it sounds cool. I don't know what the costs are on it. That would probably be and like anything else, I think is if you're going with people that are also interested in it, it would be fun. If I'm forcing my wife to go and she's just like, staring at people in dismay, not nearly as fun.
No.
But. All right. Well, once again, I think we're going to wrap it up. And I told you I would give you the information if you're interested in a werewolf game, or if you're just interested in chatting or whatever. You can send us an email at boardgamebuffetpodcast@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at boardgamechats. And we always have the Facebook page, Board Game Buffet Podcast. Some people interact with us there. But yourself, Graham?
On Twitter at Four Corners Board. It's number 4 Corners Board. Email either across the game board at gmail.com or fourcornerstheboard@gmail.com, either way. And to remind people, check out the Patreon page and check out our YouTube pages. You should be seeing some updates come over. And again, if you're listening to the audio of this podcast, you can actually you can see Dean and I face to face, sort of, whatever. You can see our faces as we're talking, kind of like marionettes and puppets.
Yeah, I mean, if you really want to see that, you can see my luxurious gray beard. So eventually, I wanted to get it to where it hangs down out of the camera view. So Amy insists that I FaceTime her so she can see it. She's never seen it,
right?
At least this long, but I mean, she's seen it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up. As always, please take care of yourselves and your loved ones. See ya.
See ya.